All right, guys. So really tonight is just like a Q&A with Tori and I. And, Tori's out there doing stuff and it looks like you're feeding the horses or doing something there. But any questions you have, like, I'll kind of facilitate as she's doing that. But yeah, it's pretty much open to whatever we want to all chat about.
That's cool. Yeah. Hey, I got my Bedrock sandals
How do you
this
like them?
afternoon. I do like them. I've been wearing them since 1 o'clock this afternoon. So I had to go grocery shopping. So yeah,
Mine
they're
on.
awesome.
Wait, Julie, weren't you talking about you needed a pair of sandals too? What are the Bedrock sandals?
So the Bedrock sandals, they're called adventure sandals. But what's cool about them is they have a lifetime warranty on them. So you buy them once, and then if anything happens to them, and I mean anything, the company will replace them.
Really?
Yeah,
Nice.
really. And they have Vibram bottoms. They have a 3D model that's going to be a little bit squishier and kinder to feet that are not used to like barefoot shoes. Or they have like the standard barefoot 4mm bottomed blah 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 whatever. But now you're supposedly supposed to be able to like ultra like the crazy, really really granola-y like barefoot people. They like do ultra trail runs in them and all kinds of crazy shit. I feel like that's a bit excessive,
Yeah.
but like I wear mine pretty much all summer at the farm. I mean, short of like if I'm literally handling the horses, but otherwise for like barn tours and stuff, they've held up beautifully. But yeah, so I actually heard about them because the lady that boards horses with me, her husband was a professional mountain climber, like trail leader, like that's what he did. Is he wrote routes for the National Forest Service and like took people on like these extreme like mountain rock climbing trips and stuff. I mean, not now, he's older and like now it's just they do fun stuff, but he's the one that said this company's legit. They're really good. I've had mine replaced 3 or 4 times for different reasons.
Wow.
No questions asked. So I thought, okay.
So keep my box.
Yeah. Or at least the receipt. I think that's probably all you need is the receipt.
Yeah. I think my receipt is, maybe it was in the box. I'll go back and look. It's on the counter. So
yeah.
And then I got my tennis shoes today too, but I haven't tried them yet. I'll wear them tomorrow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which ones did you end up getting?
I got the Ultra. I can't remember. Something 6.
Not Provision, but something like that. Is it that one?
Oh,
it doesn't matter. You don't have to tell me. It's okay.
Yeah. I thought my iPad was right there. So
I got my new Ultras yesterday, and I'm super excited about it because I had a pair of trail runners, and I had to finally come to terms with the fact that I don't get out to the park to do trail running very often, and so I needed a pair of road running shoes.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you look on Amazon, they're actually on sale right now. I think
That's where I got
mine
them
for like 98, which is pretty good for them.
Yeah.
Hold on, I've got to say hi. Bruce is here. Hang on a minute. Hi, baby. Hi.
Oh.
Hi. He always comes to say hi.
He's cute.
He's the community mascot. He has to come say hi to everybody.
Oh, that's
I'm on a meeting. I can't stay, but bye, baby. He's like, where are you going? Normally, so his owner always walks him down around the farm, and he always comes to tie the horses and comes hang out for a little while. It's really cute.
No, I was looking for a pair of sandals because my Birkenstocks I found make my ankle. I have Achilles tendonitis or something in my ankle, and my Birkenstocks kill it. So I've been wearing my barefoot shoes everywhere.
Do you want to know why?
I'm curious. Tell me why.
Well, and then it makes my knee hurt too. So
Yes.
I'm like,
So, um, so your Birkenstocks, while they have cork in them, which is good, they're also stiff bottomed. Which if you looked at the old one, like circa 1970s, 80s, those Birkenstocks, they weren't as stiff bottomed as these ones are. They were made more of like natural material, and so like as you wore them in, they got more flexible. These ones do not. So, what's happening is as the cork molds to your foot, what it's doing is it's setting your arch in a specific place, just like an arch support would. And what that means is when you walk and your toes try to splay, your arch doesn't go anywhere. So there's like a stopping point. So when that happens, your talus bone, which is the bone that sits between your foot bone and your shin bone, can't move out of the way in order for the ankle to flex. So your shin bone ends up having to transfer that rotating force up into your knee. So you get more torque on the knee and the ankle can't move as much as it's supposed to. And on top of that, you're also not going to get nearly the like fascial stretch in the foot, which is what helps prevent plantar fasciitis. So all that like cascades. It's not just Birkenstocks, but I swear, I don't know when they stopped using like full leather bottoms, but they like it totally changed the structure of the shoe. Because the new so the old ones, they used to, once you wore them in, they'd flex with your foot and they'd give enough that you didn't have that happen. And I say old ones, but like these are like old ones. But they don't do that anymore. Like those suckers are solid. Yeah, so now that you're wearing your barefoot shoes and your ankles can move freely and everything's feeling happy, your body's going to give you a hard stop when you put those shoes back on, because it's like, don't you know, this is not what we want.
And it really does. It really, like, I just wore them yesterday to drive to pick up my daughter, and even driving with them and not really walking at all made my knee hurts today and my ankle hurts today still. So I'm like, have to be barefoot or wear my other shoes when I'm doing stuff.
Yeah, you should totally look into the bedrocks. Now there are other, like the company Zero with an X, it's like XERO. They make a barefoot sandal, but theirs is like a true barefoot sandal, so it's going to be very, very minimal. Whereas I like the bedrocks better because they have a little more cushion for all of us that have like old injuries that aren't ever going away.
Yeah. I'm concerned about my Achilles tendon. It gets really sore. So, and my knee.
So
my patella. I guess it's the patella on the knee.
I would definitely say they have like I want to say it's a 30 or 60-day like trial warranty on them too. Like, I mean, they'd replace them if you mess them up, but obviously like they have a trial period so you can try them also. And I'd say look at the 3D models, the ones that have the 3D footbed. Those would probably be more of what you were looking for.
Okay.
You said the brand's Bedrock?
Yeah.
And you got them on Amazon?
No. I got the Ultras on Amazon. Bedrocks you can get at REI. You can get at a couple other like outdoorsy adventure stores, but you can also just get them on their website.
Got it.
I got the bedrocks on their website, and if you have a printer, you can print out their foot size thing and stick your foot on it. So that's how I got my size. So, but I went to their website because I didn't.
Okay, I'll do that. Do you mind how much you paid for them? Remember?
Say they're like what, around 100, something like that.
Yeah, I think 115, or maybe that was
so
my
just like a
tennis
Birkenstock,
shoes.
basically.
Yeah,
Birkenstocks are $100. So
right. Basically, except these guys are going to replace them, so you're only going to buy them once.
Yeah.
You only buy them once.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that when he told me that. He's like, yeah, the dog chewed on him one time. I sent him back, and then one time I lost one in a river, and I just emailed them and I sent them my receipt.
That's
So,
crazy.
like,
That's cool.
true to their word.
That's an awesome warranty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you, Tabby.
You're welcome. I texted it to you.
Oh,
'Cause you
you're
said
so
that-
awesome, Tabby.
I'm,
Good on you, Tabby.
I'm multitasking on my computer, so I just texted her the link. So if anybody else wants it, I can post it up in the Facebook group once we're done the call. Actually, because I can't transfer it on my phone because I'm on the computer.
Okay.
It's in the movement Facebook group, but I don't think it's in the actual the other Facebook group.
Yeah.
Okay.
My bedrocks were 115, and with Illinois tax, they ended up being 122.
We don't have state taxes, so
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, I live in Illinois. They tax your breathing nowadays, so not really, but it feels like it. So, okay. And my ultras were Lone Peak 6.
You got trail version.
Yes, I did, because
Nice.
I liked how they looked, and I figured I walk on concrete, but half the trail is grass and stuff where I walk. So
The one thing I want you to check with those. So sometimes with the Lone Peaks, I've only actually had this happen to one client. So it may absolutely not apply to you at all. But they are designed for ultra running. So they are going to tip so basically they're designed to kick in from like a support standpoint when you're really fatigued. So when your footfall starts to get more heel dropped, or like you start to roll to the outside of your foot, they're designed to kind of like redirect your foot back to your big toe. But she found that for her, that actually messed up her walking gait and her running gait, because she was just like doing short runs in them. So I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to be you, but pay attention to it. And if things get wonky for like the first week or so that you wear them, just send them back, get a different pair. Because the ones, so they have shoes that are specifically for like the people that do the like crazy ultras. And generally speaking, they're going to be kind of, how do they say it? Oh, I can't remember. They had like a, sciencey term that they called it, but like, there's like had an ology on the end of it. I don't know, whatever. But basically, that they like are supposed to help kind of rebalance your foot during the super fatigued part of the race, run, whatever.
Okay, I think the main reason why I got them, because the toe bed was one of the bigger ones or wider ones.
Yeah, so I have the Superiors, which is like their short distance trail shoe, and I have the Escalades, I think, which is their short distance, low profile road shoe. And I like both of them. I haven't had any, I mean, they work great for me. But I have a friend who does like mid-distance. So she does like mid-distance running, and she has the Torrens. She really likes those. She hasn't had any problems with those. And actually, I had 2 other clients that switched over to the Torrens, and they're both like 10K half marathon runners. So like,
oh wow,
they run, like that's their distance that they like, and they both really have liked the Torrens. And then I have a couple of like, I don't know if you want to call them long distance walkers, but like they like to go on walks a lot. And the Torin seems to be their shoe of choice also. So not saying that what you got won't work. It might work absolutely fine. I'm just saying pay attention and don't discount any kind of new signals your body may be giving you in that first trial week or so.
Okay.
Like the first couple of weeks. And if you notice anything wonky, just remember you're trying out new shoes and they may just not be balanced well for you. That's okay.
Okay. Got it.
Now I'm curious to look into them.
Me too, especially for walking long distances.
Yeah.
I really
Like,
like them. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of them to start with, because they seemed kind of stiff. Like, but then the more I dealt with people that had more like joint obstruction that they wasn't going to resolve with any kind of exercise, it seemed like a good compromise. Like it worked. It was an excellent shoe that just kind of like hit that middle ground. And I've been really happy with them.
Now I'm on Amazon looking at all of them. I think the reason why I bought the Lone Peak ones, because I like the look of the one that I got. I like the color.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The color schemes are pretty.
Yeah.
Marlena, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was gonna say, I think those are the ones I have, Torie, the Torrents. Is that the second one you told me to get? I did my first run in them today. I mean, I can't run a lot right now. I can only go, she said no more than a block, but I did like half a block 3 times. And they felt really good.
Good.
Yeah, my toes were like breathing and they had
Yeah.
space.
That makes me happy.
It was really nice. Yeah,
Good.
I really liked
Good.
them. And I wear them
Good.
to walk all the time.
Good.
The
Yeah,
color
awesome.
scheme isn't that pretty. I think they only had one option as far as color. So
What color did you get?
They're kind of like they're almost like a grayish, like a real light gray. And then they have these.
I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with all the like toe box talk, especially if like someone who, I don't know, that isn't like doing Torie exercises and stuff, like, I guess, could you explain like why we're talking about the shoes, like why we care about like the wider toe box? And like, I know Julie was saying like wearing her certain shoes affects her ankle and how it like affects her knee, like maybe explaining like for maybe the people who are listening who maybe don't do Torie exercises, like why we, I guess, care.
Okay. So you care because that's your body's balance. That's your body's point of balance within the world. So it connects you to the rest of the world. So if it's not functioning well, meaning your feet, then you're not going to do so hot. So a healthy foot has 33 joints, and all of those joints should be able to move. And they were designed that way because as you walk, that's part of how your body stays upright. So the foot has to be able to splay the toes when you walk, and it has to create enough space that the midfoot can then engage the arch, pull the arch up, and then spring away and flex the ankle and all the stuff that happens up the chain as you walk. But if you're not, oh good, no one's gonna hit me. But if your foot isn't moving, none of those things happen. So for whatever reason, and interestingly enough, it's not just like shoes with heel lift that can be an issue, but it's mostly shoes that have a lot of arch support and that are very narrow toe boxed. So a narrow toe box shoe is going to kind of fit your foot into the shoe, and then when you move your toes and like that forefoot isn't going to move. It's going to do this but it's not going to do that. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So that style of shoe, or like that kind of shoe, has been problematic for a really long time. And we always just kind of like, as a society, kind of shove it under the rug and act like it's not there. And I don't know how those people have horrible feet. I don't know what happened, but you know what happened. They basically crammed their foot into a form that it wasn't designed to be in. And I mean, it's a less extreme version of foot binding, but it is foot binding in a general sense, because you're forming the foot to a position that is unnatural, and then you're walking on it and treating it like that's the only position it should be in. And that's just not the case. Now, does that mean that you can never wear those types of shoes? For some people, no, it does not mean that. What it means is you're going to end up doing more care and movement for your foot so that you can be in that kind of shoe periodically. Dancers are a good example of this. If you look at ballet dancers, like not amateur ones, but professional ones, they have extreme foot care routines because they're in point 90% of the time. However, what you don't realize is, unless you went through dance training, is that the majority of their training is not in point. The majority of their training is in either no shoes or in ballet flats that allow their feet to do this. And then as their feet get stronger and they can do more point, now then it starts to even out and you start to get more of like a 60-40 ratio, and you get like a 50-50 ratio. Generally speaking, the dancers that don't have long careers are the ones that don't take care of their feet, for this exact reason. So it's not so much that you can't ever do that. It's that, from a general standpoint, like the average person, it's not that they can't do that. It's that if you're going to do that, you're going to end up with repercussions from that you are either going to, deal with and recover from, or you're not going to deal with, and eventually it's going to cause something that's going to need surgery. Like at some point, you are going to end up down a road where all of a sudden they're like, oh, you need hip and knee replacements. I don't know how that happened. Well, 40 years ago, you started wearing these shoes and you didn't stop. That's a good indication, because it means that everything up the chain has to change how it's rotating to compensate for that lack of movement in the foot. Does that make sense? Like everything up the chain until you get to the low back, sometimes even higher depending on the person, because if your body's really, really good at adapting, it's going to figure out how to adapt. But everything is going to try to compensate for that perceived weakness. As far as your brain is concerned, that's a weak, constricted area. And it's going to divert energy away from that area and start giving you better and better skills at coping with that. So it's going to make your butt muscles tight all the time, because if your hips rotate too far, then it's going to put torque on the other side of your knee, and that's not going to work. So like, I can get down this rabbit hole real fast. I'm going to stop myself. But basically, it affects, it's a chain reaction that goes all the way up, or can go all the way up the body. Now, does that mean that every single person needs to be in barefoot shoes? If you were talking to me, yes. But if you're talking to the average person, no. And I think probably the true answer is somewhere in the middle. I think it depends on the person. I think it's something that has to be very personal, very individual. It depends on how much you want this to be like passive recovery, meaning like you don't have to do a whole lot and your body just gets better, and how much you want this to be something that you actively have to fix. So the barefoot shoes allow you to allow the body to passively fix itself. So the more you wear them and the less you wear things that are restricting, the shorter the period of time for the body to come back into like its natural alignment. Now, depending on your age, depending on your history, depending on how, if you have surgeries or you have fused bones or you have pins or plates somewhere, this all affects it, right? everything that you have had from a physical history standpoint affects whether or not this is the right decision. So it is very much something that should be discussed. I think it's not off the table for anybody. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right answer for everyone. You kind of get what I'm saying? Okay.
No,
If
that
that
makes sense.
if I talk too fast, or if like that doesn't make sense, please ask, because like I get on these excited tangents and then I'm like, wait, I don't know if everybody followed me.
So question,
Yeah.
should we go barefoot as much as possible?
Mhm.
Yeah, like in your house
Well, because
or
I mean,
stocking feet.
barefoot is ideal because you're allowing the proprioceptive nerve endings at the bottom of your feet to wake back up. And remember, like if we take that model again and we look at that kind of extreme version, the foot binding, the brain looks at that structure as that constriction of, you know, the like stiff shoe as a point of weakness that it can't fix, right? So it's stuck. And so it's going to stop, or it's going, I should say, it's going to stop. It's going to start shifting awareness and energy away from that part of the body because it's a problem it can't solve. So it will start to create compensations other places in order to do that. So when you start reversing that process, the more you can go barefoot, the more you're waking up those nerve endings again. You're reconnecting your brain to the bottom of your feet and going, hey, we're finally listening to this part of the body. You don't have to shut it out anymore. But depending on your situation, that may be a good or a bad thing. So like, I have one client who was a helicopter pilot. He had a couple of like really horrible crashes. He literally has the most effed up ankles I have ever seen on a human being that can still walk around. And I mean, the military did what, you know, they did surgery so you can and so when we work together, like there's only so much that is going to get better for him. The damage is done, but we can minimize how painful it is. We can minimize, you know, how likely it is for him to contract another injury because of it. And we can definitely like improve his balance, improve his body awareness, improve his general fitness, which is going to just make it a little easier on his feet because he's going to be holding himself up better. So it's not that there's not room for improvement. It's just that like, you know, that like there's some part of this that isn't going to get better, and you just kind of have to, you know, you kind of have to accept that. So he came to meet me initially because he wanted to do marathons with his girlfriend, and I was like, yeah, no. I was like, I mean, you could, but you may only get halfway through one, and you know, you're most likely gonna have fractures at the end of it. I was like, because that is not for you, buddy. You can't train your way into that. Now, he had already been told that by multiple doctors, so I wasn't the first one to say it. But I think because he knew I took an unconventional approach, he was hoping that I was going to be the one that said, no, we can work with that. And I was like, nah. Now, does that mean that you can't go on short training runs? We could probably get you there, you know, 3 to 5 miles or something. That's probably doable. Not a marathon. So managing expectations, I guess, is the way to look at it. I don't even think that was the beginning of your, I don't even think that was your question. You asked me if you wanted to walk around barefoot.
I think it was, though. I feel like it was, you were explaining like why, you know, we're using the shoes and why we care about the wide toe box and the bare feet shoes. Cause like someone who's probably never been introduced to you and listens to the calls, like, what the hell's a barefoot shoe? I feel like I've learned about the shoes and stuff from the calls from Julie and Terry, because obviously they work with you. And so I feel like it explained it to me, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Now,
But
and you can also,
too, so.
yeah, I mean, And you can also kind of apply this. You can, if you aren't sure if that's a route you want to go down, you can apply the idea and basically see how your body reacts to it. So like a lot of times if I've got people that, in-person people that aren't really keen on it, I'll make them take their shoes off for a workout and see how well they do. If they immediately start falling apart on me, then I'm like, all right, are we noticing that? Are we noticing something here? And you know, that was something Christy introduced to me when I CrossFitted, and I have figured out really fast that I actually worked a lot better without my shoes on than I did with them on. And I was like, this is my jam. But for most people, if you know, you haven't been exposed to a lot of barefoot work, that initial workout, now obviously not anything with like any kind of jumping or running the first time, but like any kind of lifting workout that you want to do, even just like a basic home, you know, like, I don't know, burpees and stuff, like just do it without your shoes on and see what happens. If, you know, you lose your balance, if you keep wanting to like have a wider base, if your feet keep rolling to the outside, like these are all signs that your feet aren't like awake. They're not connected to your brain. You don't have good base. Your base is unstable. And that all has to do with your proprioception and then how well those joints can move. And by well, I mean fast. Like how fast can that structure shift to adapt to what you're doing? Does that make sense?
So let me ask you like a coaching question, because I coach
it.
CrossFit. And like there's a lot of people when they squat, they roll in like this. And to me, I'm like, So what does that mean? That means their feet aren't functioning? So
it means a couple different, it can't, or I shouldn't say that. It could mean a couple of different things. This is one of those depends questions. So you're noticing the same symptom, but it can have multiple reasons. Okay, so rolling ankles rolling in or ankles falling in could be that the ankle doesn't have or isn't capable of flexing to the degree that they're asking for in the squat. So the body is finding another route, not the straight route, right? So the straight route would be knee over toes, everything drives straight. And the body says, nope, can't do that. So it's like, okay, well, we can roll in or we can roll out. Which do you want to do? Now, the safer option from like I'm not going to hurt myself doing this, but it's still not going to be a smart thing to do, would be to roll out. But what usually happens with people like that is that they probably roll or fall to the inside also when they walk. And so their VMO muscle is usually fairly turned off also. So the VMO is the muscle that is on the inside, upper inside quadrant of the patella. And when it's turned off, the knee can dive to the inside as much as it wants. It basically just can like whoosh. So if anybody watched the CrossFit Games and watched Tia Claire Toomey, she's a good example of someone who has a slow VMO. Now, for her, it doesn't fucking matter. She's a beast. Like, she can make it, it doesn't matter. But when you watch her legs engage, watch, like if you wanted to, I mean, if anybody really wanted to, slow the footage down and watch what happens at her knees. Her VMO on the inside delays. It fires behind her quads. So quads fire first, VMO fires second. What happens is that allows an opening at the knee for it to dive to the inside. So when she comes up in her squat, nothing tracks straight. Now, that is a compensation that her body has developed over a really long period of time, and it has not done her any harm. It's absolutely fine. No reason to mess with it. Every compensation does not mean that like it's a bad thing. Compensations aren't necessarily a bad thing. They're only a bad thing if they do bad things to you or you hurt yourself. But in general, none of us are built absolutely perfectly and symmetrically. So that textbook, this is exactly what it should look like, is not accurate for like anyone in the human race. We're all going to have things that we do better. that look more textbook in that particular instance, and we all have things that are going to look not as accurate to that textbook pretty perfect aesthetic view of like that action, but could get the job done. So as long as it's not actively creating a problem, the compensation is not necessarily a bad thing. So when you're coaching,
I have a question on that really quickly.
Oh, go ahead.
How do you know if it's causing a problem? What is hurting? What
I was getting into.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I was like, all right. So you're looking for a couple of clues. It depends, one, on if you see it when they go down or when they go up or both. So that's number one. Like, does it only happen on one end of the squat, or does it happen on both ends? So we need to answer that question. The question, in other movements where the knee has to go over the toe, do they have the same problem, or do they roll to the outside? So like, let's say like lunges, or when they go to do a burpee or like a box jump, when their knee has to drive over their toe, can they actually make it in a straight line or not? Do they often complain about knee pain, hip pain, back pain, foot pain, plantar fasciitis, tendonitis, any kind of itis? If they're complaining about anything on their lower body, that's a clue that it's creating a problem. If you see them rotating in their squat, so if you look at them sideways, and as they go up or down, they are not in a straight line. They have to twist in order to make the movement happen. Yep. So if they have to twist in order to make the movement happen, that's a good indication that it's not a compensation pattern that's going to serve them well. And I usually, to filter all of those things out, I will make them, if I have access to it, I will make them squat with a water bag, because a bar can hide a lot of things. A water bag is like you can't hide shit when you are squatting a water bag.
What's a water bag?
You never seen a water bag?
No.
It's basically a
bag
clear
of water?
sandbag. It's a clear sandbag that's filled with water. It's specific, like it's not just fill a sandbag up with water. That won't work. but they sell them on Amazon. And they're clear, so you as the trainer can see the water going back and forth.
Oh.
And they have handles on them, like in the same spots that a sandbag would have handles on them. Or you can get the ones where you swing, which are fancy, like you don't need to do the swing stuff. But it's going to give you a really good indication of how balanced that human is overall. Because you're not looking at it like, oh, those ankles aren't doing what I want them to do. You're looking at, okay, pull that lens back. Is it a balanced human? If it's a balanced human, the compensation is fine. If it's not a balanced human, nope, we're getting rid of it. Because that overall balance means the body found a better way. And if it can produce that better way and it's not hurting anything, leave it alone.
Torie, I feel like you explained this to me, and then I could be totally wrong, but I feel like it had to have been you, where you were talking about like a basketball player or something, like doing a jump shot that might have been a weird way to do it, and then someone, or I might have listened to this on a podcast, and then someone messed with his like shot, the way that he performed the actual motion of doing the shot, and it completely like messed up his entire game. Like he was like not as good of a player as he was, because they like
it was not, or if it was me, I don't remember the conversation. That doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't me.
I don't know, that just popped into my head, so I was like, oh, another way of thinking about it.
Yeah. So, and this is something, honestly, like I learned training horses, because not every horse is built the same either. First, like when you're training horses, like your foundation, everybody has to have the same foundation because you want them to have good manners and you want them to be safe around humans. So like the basics are the same. But then once you get past the basics and you're looking at like whether or not they're going to be good for, you know, whatever sport, what they're keen on, what they like to learn, what they don't like to learn. A lot of them like to do things that they are not actually built appropriately to do from a standard standpoint. Like the standard of the sport would say, that's not a horse that should be able to do this job. So what you have to end up doing, because some horses are really dead set on it. Like they just really like doing this one thing. And for those ones, your best gauge for how to go about training them for it is to constantly go back to that, are they overall balanced approach? Like however you need to break it down, let them choose. Like basically you're going to present them with little small puzzles of each step of what you're teaching them. And then you're going to let them choose the route that is intuitive to them. And as long as that overall balance is being maintained, let it slide. Like if that's what works for them, that's fine. Because that is going to be the safest way for them to do what they enjoy doing. So like it's going to look like once you get it all polished, it's going to look the same from a results standpoint, but like the actual actions may look slightly different from like the horse next to them. Does that make sense? And I think with people, a lot of times we get really stuck on what it should look like in the process. And oftentimes we miss the forest for the trees kind of deal. Like the point is, so if anyone I rarely get to watch the CrossFit Games, but for whatever reason, it just kept popping up on my feed, and I had time to watch it. So if you watch the sandbag ladder that the females did, these women, they had to go out and do like a strongman event at the CrossFit Games, and they had to lift sandbags. The lightest one was 150 pounds. The heaviest one was like, I think 275 or like 300 pounds. It was insane. But none of them knew how to do this prior to going out there. They got like a half-hour briefing from a strongman competitor who was, I guess, one of the judges or whatever, and explained to them how to do it, like the actual technique. And then they had to go out there and figure it out. But the cool part about it was to watch each one of them and basically how they problem solved it. And the one girl, so the two girls at the very end, because it was like basically like if you couldn't lift it, you were out kind of deal. And it was just down to the last man. So the two people at the very end, one of them was like 5'6", maybe 140 pounds. She was lifting more than herself and then some. She was almost lifting twice her body weight in sand. And the other one was like almost 6 foot, like solid freaking muscle. And like was having no problem just popping these suckers up. And the technique was 100% like completely different. They looked nothing alike when they were actually getting the sandbag up. But they were both getting it up. They both got it done. And actually, the one that was tiny, who was not lifting it correctly, actually was lifting more weight in relation to her body weight. So my point just is like, she found a technique that worked for her and she rolled with it. Like that often is the answer when we're coaching. Like if, at least when I look at it, that's what I'm looking at. Like if they are finding something that works for them and I don't see any red flags, like their body's in balance, everything's working the way that it should, meaning like they're getting from point A to point B, there's no major fatigue, their body's not throwing any serious signs of distress, and I'm not seeing anything change from their vestibular system standpoint, from their from their breathing system and from their balance system. Like everything's still green light. It just looks a little funny. I'm not that worried about it. But I also don't train with barbells. And the reason why I don't is that they hide a lot of stuff and they're very unforgiving. So because they're so rigid. So a lot of times, like if I have people that are in that, like, you know, I want everything to stay balanced, but it's going to look a little funny camp, I generally use sandbags or water bags for them. Like it just, I feel like it's safer because they're going to, that sand or that water is going to shift differently, and it's going to give their body a longer period of time to figure out, oh, we're off balance. We need to correct that. Barbell is a quick motherfucker. Like it's gonna get you. You've got to be really, really solid. I can remember when Christy was trying to teach me how to clean. Christy was trying to teach me how to clean, and I couldn't get it. Like I couldn't get it. I was so in my head, and she just like stuck me in front of a sandbag. She was like, "Just do this," and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so much easier!" And it wasn't lighter, but like my brain could move at the speed of the sandbag. And so I stayed in balance, which meant my timing was better and everything flowed better. And if I'm being really honest, I never really got out of the sandbag is still my favorite. I don't particularly like barbells, but like I got to the point where I could do it. I just like always was like, I like that better. So I don't know. I mean, when I have people that move a little bit differently, that usually is my default. Like I'll throw water or sand at them and say like, you're going to live here for a while until I am 100% positive you're not going to hurt yourself. Does that kind of answer your question, Leah?
It's very interesting. And it's funny you said that about the barbell, because half the time I'm like, I don't know what happened. The barbell's on the ground, then all of a sudden it's all over my head. Like, I don't know how the fuck it got there. It's like an out-of-body experience. I can't tell you what I did. Which sounds a little frightening.
Yeah. It scared the shit out of me.
Like if it was wrong and you saw it and you told me how to fix it, I don't know how to fix it because it happened so fast. Interesting. I'm going to pay attention. I have this one girl in mind at the gym who's she lifts a lot of weight, but it's frightening to watch her. It's like frightening. I'm always like, yeah, but she also doesn't listen. Like you're like, oh, what about this? She's like, yeah, and then just does her own thing, right? I don't know. So whatever. But I'm going to pay attention to her, just her aches and pains and what she talks about, you know?
Yeah. And if you come to a point where she's willing to listen, and you do feel like she needs to kind of bump down to like the soft weights, which is kind of how I categorize water and sand as opposed to like the solid weights. You can make it hurt. You can make it feel like she's doing just as much as she is with that heavier shit. Which if that's her driver, if that's her thing, that she's like, I just like that feeling like of, you know, just throwing heavy weights around, like you can simulate that in a way that is going to make her still feel like you know, I did something really, really hard.
She's a very competitive, stubborn Polish girl.
Yeah, it might not go that way then.
No.
That's too funny.
That was a good question. That was cool. Because it's like where like Leah's coming from as like a coach, that, you know, what they teach you textbook is that it's, you know, certain feet, you know, alignment to do a certain movement. And then if your body's like not moving that specific way, you know, that was what I first learned, but I follow different people now that like talk about, you know, everybody's hips are different and all of those things. And it's not always, you know, necessarily a bad thing. So I don't know. That's cool. I like to nerd out on that.
So yeah. And so when you're looking at that from a teaching perspective, and I learned this honestly training, and I relate everything to horseback riding and horse training, because that's what I did first. But I look at it like this. They're trying to train your eye, right? So they're, as a coach, they're trying to get you to understand what you're looking for. And oftentimes when they're in the middle of trying to do that, they get so hyper focused on the details that they don't want to muddy the water and basically say like, well, it depends, or it depends over here, it depends over there. So when you're a more experienced lifter, or maybe you're just a more observant person and you've noticed all these different things with different people, it can sometimes be really hard to swallow those standards because you're like, but.
Bye, Leah.
Bye, Leah. And I know like it took me forever to, I mean, that was pretty much my experience at CrossFit PAX when I started working there. I basically said to Chrissy, like, okay, teach me all the CrossFit things because I'm going to see all these people and I need to understand what the heck it is that they're doing. And 90% of the time, I was either working on them or I was watching them move in the gym and peppering her and the other coaches with questions, trying to get a good frame of reference around what I was watching. Because that was my first exposure to like gym anything. Prior to that, I played rugby, I trained horses, and if I was cross training, I'd like run or like do farm work, and that was it. Like I didn't even know what a bicep curl was. I was like, I don't know, whatever. So for me, it was like a 2-year crash course in just watching, athletes move with like really solid weights, and then getting an idea of like what each coach's background, or how each coach's background influenced their eye and what they were seeing. So like the coaches that came from a military background, they perceived things differently from the coaches that came from like an engineering background, or like came from a bodybuilding background. Or I had one guy in there that was a martial artist and like an endurance athlete, and so he had a very different perspective on what to tweak in people. And when it's done well, I think what happens at CrossFit gyms often is that the people that kind of your coaching style speaks to them, they'll kind of migrate into your classes, and then you have these little like, this person relates better to this and this person relates better to that kind of thing. But if you don't have coaches that are aware that background information is influencing their eye and how they're perceiving that movement, that is when I think it dissolves and it gets dangerous and it gets really not helpful because they get real rigid about the way that they think about it. And often that's because in their head, that's the only way it makes sense right now. So like, I know when I first started learning about all the movement stuff after all the CrossFit stuff, I had about like 6 to 8 month period where like CrossFit was bad and all heavy movement was bad. And like in my brain, I was like, okay, just throw all that out the window and like learn this stuff, because that was what I could consume. But I didn't coach people at that point. And I knew that that's where I was. Like I needed to absorb it, and I didn't want to influence other people while I was there. And then I got to the point where I was like, okay, I want to try this with some people that I know aren't doing any kind of like serious training and just see what it does to them. And then it was like, I got a little further into it and I'm like, okay, now I want to see what it does to these people. And it took me a long time before I was like, okay, I can see where this can meld with this, if that makes sense. And I think that for most people, that's really the answer. Like each individual is going to need a different layering or melding technique or like way that it's going to work for them. It's not a cookie cutter answer, but the more you recognize that as a coach, and the more you can see that how that needs to play for that person or play out for that person, I think that's what makes you a good coach. Like, so like it's hard when you're first learning it and you're like, but this is what the book says. But I did the same thing with massage. Like when I went to massage school, like I knew how to do everything. And then I got out of massage school, like I know how to do nothing. Like, none of this is like school.
Yeah, I feel like the practical application, I mean, that's how I felt when I first became a trainer, where it was like textbook and then something didn't feel right. And then, diving into more people that I like looked up to and learning more information and then applying it, like you start to I don't know, see people just move differently. And then it's like, oh, well, they say you're supposed to start with this, but is that really what the person needs to be starting with? So I don't know. I think that's cool. So I can totally relate to that.
And too, like especially when you're looking at like starting points, or like when you're taking on an athlete that maybe has some background in, fitness or whatever, but maybe not necessarily exactly what you do. Like often that starting point is a trial and error point. Like it's all right, we're gonna throw this out there and see what happens, and then whatever happens, that's what's gonna indicate to us what direction we're going. And that's a scary thing as a trainer too, because you're like, okay, trial and error, but also don't hurt this new person. So that has its own like little like moments, but
No, it totally makes sense. All right, guys. Well, we have been on for an hour. I feel like this was a really good conversation, and getting to, I don't know, just learn more about like, I don't know, Torie, I like to nerd out, but like understanding like kind of on a deeper level, like why you're recommending these certain things to, about the shoes, and talking about the feet, how it moves up the chain and it can affect, and then I think it's also cool that you touched on that it's like, all bodies aren't going to move the same. So I know like sometimes we make yourselves like feel bad if we're not doing something exactly like how we think we're supposed to. So I feel like it was a good conversation.
I just have to say this last thing, and this also applies to the way that everybody, just like everybody has different bodies, everybody needs to, like, what they need to do from a training perspective is going to look different. Lauren and I were just having that conversation actually earlier today, and I had remembered, and I can't remember where I heard this, but there's a Thomas Edison quote where basically some reporter asked him something about what he thought about his 57 failures before he made the light bulb, and he said, I didn't fail 57 times. I learned 57 times how not to make a light bulb. And I was like, I think that was National Treasure. I think that's where it was. Anyways, the point was, when something's not working for you from a training perspective, like whether it's the routine, whether it's the time of day, whether it's whatever, it's not a failure. It's words. You're learning something about yourself. You're learning something about what works for you, what doesn't work for you. It's not, you didn't fail at something. You learned what not to do. Like, it's just as important, if not sometimes more important, to know that than it is to know like what you like doing or what works for you, because what works for you isn't going to be ideal. Like, you're not ever going to have your ideal situation all of the time. You know what I mean?
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was something we talked about last week too, that it's like, movement doesn't have to look like you always think it's going to have to look. And it doesn't have to be the same every single week or every single, whatever. That you don't have to stick to the same thing if it's not serving you.
And I think that's also the fun part, because then you get to, be curious about, well, why is it not working? And you get to play with different things and see like what works, what doesn't work. Yeah. So, not to keep you guys on, I could talk about this forever.
I love it. Does anybody have anything else for Torie? Any specific questions before we hop off? I don't think so. All right, ladies.
Ladies.
Torie, thank you for getting on, and we'll see you.
It worked this time.
We did it. We did it.
Yes.
All right, guys. Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you, ladies.
See ya.
Bye.